The message came through at 4:52 in the morning. I was standing inside the terminal at Ramstein Air Base, pack still on my back, boots I hadn't swapped in 32 hours, the kind of bone-deep tired that settles behind your eyes and won't leave. 8 months in Germany. 8 months of 500 formation calls, training rotations, and weekends spent watching other soldiers video call their families back home. Now, finally, I was heading back to Austin. I pulled out my phone the way you do when you've been waiting without realizing it. Not for anything specific. Just something. A safe flight home. Can't wait to see you. Anything at all. One new message. Mom. Thanksgiving is better without you. Stay away. I read it once. Then twice. Then I typed back exactly one word. Understood. I found a bench near the gate, opened my laptop, and started working through paperwork. Within 48 hours, there were 6 missed calls stacking up on my mother's phone. One of them came from a real estate attorney, not hers. And the thing she'd spent 3 years quietly building behind my back began to unravel in the most ordinary, irreversible way. My name is Cassidy Monroe. I'm 26 years old. I'm a specialist in the United States Army. And this is the story of the last time I let my own family use my name as a convenience they could pick up and set down whenever it suited them. If you're watching this, please subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Let me take you back to where this all started, to the night my name ended up on that deed. I grew up in Cedar Park, Texas. Small house on a cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood where people wave from their driveways. My parents divorced when I was 9. My dad, Warren, got the house. My mom, Patricia, got the apartment near the lake. I shuttled between them until I stopped shuttling. When I was 16, Dad remarried. Her name was Donna. I'm not going to tell you Donna was a villain who swept in and destroyed everything. What happened was quieter than that. Donna moved in. She had her routines, her opinions about how a household should run, and I gradually shifted from someone who lived there to someone who was visiting. You feel that difference before you can explain it. Mom passed 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3 when they caught it, stage 4 9 weeks later. I got emergency leave and made it back for 4 days. I sat beside her hospital bed and watched game shows she couldn't follow anymore. I held her hand. I didn't make it back for the funeral. I don't say that out loud very often. I enlisted at 18, not to run from anything. The army was the straightest line I could see to a stable life. Structure, income, purpose that didn't hinge on whether anyone at the breakfast table noticed you existed. I tested well, worked hard, made specialist. For a while, I kept calling home. That part didn't last. 4 years ago, my dad called out of nowhere. Not to ask how I was doing. He called because he needed something, which, looking back, was the only pattern I ever needed. He and Donna wanted to sell the house on Crestfield Drive and buy something newer. More space, a better school district for my half-sister Maya, more room for Donna's things. The problem was Dad's credit was sitting around 628, and their documented income didn't clear the threshold for a decent rate. The best offer they'd gotten was 7.6%. That number would follow them for 30 years. My uncle Dennis called 2 days later. Dennis is my dad's older brother, a retired property attorney out of San Antonio. Precise, deliberate, the kind of man who explains things twice just to make sure the first explanation landed. If you go on as co-borrower, Dennis said, the rate drops to 4.7. You'd hold 25% equity in the property. He didn't push. He laid out the numbers. Explained what co-borrower liability meant for my credit. Gave me a week to decide. I said yes, not because I wasn't paying attention. I said yes because I understood something Dennis hadn't said aloud. If my name was on that paperwork, I had legal standing. I wasn't just the daughter they called when they needed something. I was a party to the contract. We closed that spring. I set up an automatic allotment, $7.50 a month, pulled from my military pay and deposited directly into the account tied to the mortgage. That covered about 40% of the monthly note. Dennis kept copies of everything. I didn't know yet why that would matter. The first year, Dad called once to say thank you. 2 minutes. The rate is saving us real money. I said of course. He said talk soon. We didn't talk for 5 months after that. By year 2, he stopped calling altogether. I kept sending the $750. Every month, automated, steady as a utility bill.
I told myself it was just a quiet stretch. People get busy. Life moves fast.
What I couldn't see from a base in Georgia or a forward position in Germany, was what was happening on the other end of every call I tried to make.
My grandmother Evelyn lives with them part of the year. She's 81.
Sharp mind, but slow on her feet now, and she doesn't fight with technology.
She depends on whoever hands her the phone. I must have called that house 25 times over 3 years. Donna answered most of them. She's resting. She just went down.
Oh, I'll pass it along. I didn't find out until Thanksgiving that Grandma Evelyn never received a single message. My half-sister Maya, 17, sent me one text that whole time, asking if I was coming home for Christmas.
I wrote back within the hour. Donna saw it on Maya's phone that night.
Maya told me later. Donna sat across from her at the kitchen table and told her in a voice that didn't leave room for argument that she didn't need to be in contact with me. And meanwhile, my dad told the extended family I'd drifted.
That I was wrapped up in army life. That they'd tried.
If nobody corrects a lie like that, it becomes the story everyone agrees on. 3 months before Thanksgiving, Dad walked into a Century 21 office and sat down with a listing agent named Brad Vickers.
I didn't know this at the time.
Home values in the Cedar Park area had moved considerably over 4 years. The house they bought for $285,000 was now appraised somewhere around $390,000.
There was real money sitting in those walls.
And Dad needed it. Donna's catering business had been operating at a loss for over a year. Maya's college applications were coming up. The equity was the answer. Dad asked his attorney, a man named Gaines, whether there was any way to move forward with a sale without notifying a co-owner. Gaines told him no, there wasn't.
So he had a problem with my name on that deed. He could have called me.
Could have explained the situation, offered to buy out my 25% at a fair price, and asked me to sign a clean transfer. I might have said yes.
We'll never know.
Because he never offered it. Instead, he took the longer road, the one that required me to stay distant, uninformed, and agreeable.
He needed me out of the picture.
The Thanksgiving text wasn't grief.
It wasn't anger. It was a door he was trying to close before I could walk through it. He just didn't count on the fact that I was already on my way.
I called Captain Rivera at 5:45 in the morning, German time. Marisol Rivera is a JAG officer, Judge Advocate General, the military's legal branch. I'd worked with her on a housing dispute for a soldier in my unit the previous winter.
She picked up on the second ring.
I kept it brief.
Co-borrower on a civilian mortgage. Reason to believe primary borrower was moving toward a listing without notifying me. What were my options? She was quiet a moment.
You want to stop the sale, or you want your equity?
I thought about it.
I want what's mine.
She gave me 2 steps.
First, cancel the allotment immediately through military pay. My right, no explanation needed, effective next pay cycle. Second, send an equity position inquiry to the lender. Standard letter. Co-borrowers right under the loan agreement. Dad would know I sent it, but he wouldn't know what I was planning next.
I pulled up my pay portal. Found the allotment line.
Confirmed the cancellation. $750 a month, back in my account for the first time in 4 years. Then I drafted the equity inquiry letter. 11 minutes. Sent it to the lender at 5:58 a.m. I didn't threaten anyone. I just stopped pretending my name wasn't on that paper. 48 hours later, on a Wednesday morning in Cedar Park, my dad's phone buzzed with an email from the mortgage servicer.
Donna was in the kitchen. Maya was upstairs.
The house smelled like coffee and dryer sheets and whatever calm people maintain when things underneath aren't calm at all. The subject line read, Co-borrower inquiry, loan account. Dad read it twice.
Walked to the kitchen doorway. Donna. His voice was flat in a way that made her set down her mug.
She did something with the bank.
He called my number. I didn't pick up. He called Gaines. The attorney walked him through it slowly.
An equity position inquiry wasn't a lawsuit. It was a co-owner establishing the current value of her stake, her legal right.
There was nothing Dad could do to reverse it.
What if she pushes for a partition sale?
Dad asked.
Then a court orders the property sold, Gaines said. Proceeds split by ownership percentage.
6 missed calls on my phone by that afternoon. I was already in the air.
Here's what nobody knew. I had bought that ticket back in September. I was sitting in a break room at the base, eating a granola bar, looking at the Delta calendar on my phone. Thanksgiving was late that year. I had leave approved, dates cleared. I booked the flight to Austin before I even finished the granola bar. When that text came in at 4:52 a.m., the seat was already assigned.
I thought about canceling. I won't pretend I didn't.
I sat on that bench for a while, staring at the confirmation screen while the terminal noise ran on around me.
But I kept coming back to Grandma Evelyn. She's 81. Sharp, but her winters have gotten harder. I thought about all the calls where Donna had picked up.
All the times I'd been told she was resting, unavailable, just stepped out. I thought about 4 years of Thanksgivings and Christmases missed, not because I hadn't tried, but because something had been quietly built between us that I hadn't fully understood until that morning in Germany. My grandmother believed I had simply walked away from her. I needed her to know that wasn't true. Not in a letter. Not in a voicemail. In person, at the same table where no one could intercept it.
I didn't cancel the ticket.
Austin to Cedar Park is 25 minutes on a clear day. I picked up the rental, drove out of the garage with the radio off. The city thinned behind me and the exits I'd grown up knowing started coming up in the right order again. I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot 2 miles from the house and called Uncle Dennis.
He picked up on the second ring.
Cassidy.
I'm in Cedar Park. A pause. Not surprised.
Dennis doesn't do surprised. Are you coming to Thanksgiving tomorrow? Your grandmother asked me herself, he said. Judith and I will be there at noon. Can you bring the original closing paperwork?
I said.
And the allotment records if you have them. 3 seconds of silence.
I have everything, Dennis said.
Kept copies of all of it. I'll be there at 12:15.
He didn't ask why.
He's a property attorney who spent 30 years watching families handle real estate badly.
I think he understood the moment I said it.
I thanked him, ended the call, and drove to a motel on Research Boulevard. Paid cash for one night.
Dad didn't know I was in town.
Thanksgiving morning, the house on Aldercroft Lane looked like a holiday card.
Donna had been up since 7.
Cornucopia centerpiece on the dining table, the good china, 3 different kinds of pie cooling on the counter. Dad drove out at 10 to pick up Grandma Evelyn from her assisted living complex on Lakeline Boulevard. In the car on the way back, he mentioned, casually, the way you mentioned the weather, that I probably wasn't making it this year.
Something about deployment.
The schedule.
Grandma Evelyn looked out the window.
That girl never comes anymore.
We try, Mom, Dad said. You know how it is with the army. She didn't answer.
Back at the house, Maya set the table. She checked her phone every few minutes in a way that was not subtle. Dennis and Judith arrived at noon sharp, Dennis in a button-down, an expression that gave nothing away, Judith with a pecan pie and the kind of warmth that makes you feel welcome before you've said a word. At the top of the canvas bag Judith carried, just visible above the handle, was the corner of a manila envelope. At 12:15, I parked one house down and walked. The driveway had a new set of string lights along the porch railing. The flower bed along the front path had been redone. Dark mulch, orange mums. I noticed those things the way you notice details when you're trying not to think too hard about what you're walking toward. I rang the bell. Footsteps, quick, lighter ones. The door swung open and Maya stood there in a sweater sheet half-tucked, and her face moved through 4 different expressions in about 2 seconds, surprise, uncertainty, and then something simpler and younger breaking through underneath both of them. You actually came. Hey, Maya.
She stepped back.
Not quite inviting me in, not quite blocking the way, just adjusting to new information.
I walked in.
Donna appeared from the kitchen doorway before I'd made it 3 steps into the hall.
She was holding a dish towel.
The moment she saw me, her face went perfectly, deliberately still.
Cassidy. Not a question. Not a welcome. A marker. Donna. I kept my voice level.
I came to see Grandma Evelyn. Dad came down the hall from the living room. He stopped when he saw me, and I watched his expression skip past surprise straight into something harder, controlled, alert. I told you not to come. You did, I said. I replied. We looked at each other for a moment. Then from the living room, a voice, thinner than I remembered, but clear. Cassidy. I walked past my father, not around him, past him, close enough that he had to take a half step to the side. Grandma Evelyn was in the wing chair near the front window. When she saw my face, her hand came up to her mouth. I crossed the room and crouched down in front of her. "Hi, Grandma Evelyn. I'm home." She held both my hands and didn't let go for a long time. She looked older than I remembered, thinner through the shoulders, the skin at her temples more translucent. But her grip was steady, and her eyes were completely clear. She was looking at me the way you look at someone you had started to believe you would never see again. "You're so thin," she said. The first thing grandmothers say. "I'm fine, Grandma. I promise." Dennis and Judith were already seated when we came in from the living room. Judith stood and wrapped both arms around me in the uncomplicated way that has always made her my favorite person in that family. Dennis gave me a single nod across the room, the kind of communication that doesn't need translation. Dad pulled Dennis into the hallway while Donna managed the kitchen. I heard him through the arch, voice low and tight. "Did you call her? Did you say something?" Dennis's answer was calm enough that I couldn't make out the words. Dad came back looking like whatever he'd heard hadn't helped. We sat down. 11 people around a table dressed like a magazine spread. Donna opened the meal with a remark about the turkey, got polite response from Aunt Carol, and smoothly redirected into a question about Maya's school year. Grandma Evelyn had settled in the chair to my left. Under the table, she found my hand. "You said you called," she said quietly, eyes forward. "Warren told me you never." She stopped. "I called a lot," I said just as quietly. She was still for a moment. "I see." 2 words. But something shifted in her face. And Donna, watching from across the table, saw it too. We were between the salad and the main course when Dad cleared his throat. "Since everyone's here." The forced ease of someone who rehearsed this. "I wanted to bring something up about the house." The table shifted the way tables do when someone changes the frequency. "Cassidy," he said, looking at me. "I just need you to sign one document. It's straightforward, a transfer of interest, given that you're stationed overseas and not using the property." "What kind of document?" I said. "Just updating the deed. Practical, going forward." "You want me to sign away my ownership stake?" "I wouldn't put it." "What's the current appraised value, Dad?" He blinked. "Brad Vickers pulled comps this fall," I said. "Comparable sales in Cedar Park have been running between $385,000 and $395,000. I kept my voice even. "My 25% of $390,000 is $97,500. You want me to sign away $97,500 at the Thanksgiving table?" The room went very quiet. Donna set her fork down on her plate with a soft click. Dennis hadn't moved. Maya was looking at her plate. Grandma Evelyn, to my left, had gone still in a way that was different from her ordinary stillness. "Put a number on it, Dad," I said quietly. "Don't call it a formality." Donna moved before he could recover. She set her napkin on the table with the precise motion of someone who has decided to take control. "Cass." Her tone was warm in a way that was entirely constructed. "Nobody is saying you don't deserve anything. We're just being practical. This is a family matter." "I agree," I said. "It is." She glanced around the table, at Carol, at Evelyn, at Dennis. The kind of glance that's actually an appeal. "Warren has been handling everything. Maintaining the property, looking after Evelyn when she needs it, managing a household while running a family. Contribution isn't only financial." "You're right," I said. "It isn't. Which is why I'd like to ask, does anyone at this table know how much I've contributed financially to this house? The actual number." Carol looked at the centerpiece. Evelyn was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "For 4 years," I said. "I've had an automatic allotment, a portion of my military pay, transferring into the account tied to this mortgage every single month. $750 a month. 48 months. I let that sit. That's $36,000. Approximately 40% of every monthly mortgage payment, sent from a base in Georgia and then from Germany." I kept my voice flat and factual, the same voice I use when I'm briefing.
Not as a gift.
As a co-borrower meeting her financial obligation on a joint loan. Which was my legal responsibility, because my name is on the mortgage and my credit was on the line, which you knew when you asked me to sign.
A pause.
I cancelled that allotment Friday morning.
Dad went still.
He pushed back from the table slightly. You can't just.
I can, I said. It's my money and my right.
Captain Rivera confirmed it.
The name landed.
I saw Dad process it, the mention of a JAG officer.
Not anger. Something more calculating. Something scared.
Grandma Evelyn's voice came from beside me, low and deliberate.
Warren.
She's been sending money here every month.
Dad didn't answer.
I asked you a question.
Her voice hadn't risen. It had gone more precise.
She has been sending $750 a month into this house.
And you told me she never called.
Never checked in.
Silence.
Which of those things is true, Warren? Dad switched tactics. He turned toward Evelyn and let his voice go soft. Mom, this isn't what it looks like. Cassidy came here looking for a fight, and she's... Warren.
Dennis's voice.
The first word he'd said at that table beyond general pleasantries.
Quiet. Not loud.
But something about the way Dennis said that single word made 3 separate conversations stop at once.
He folded his napkin and set it beside his plate.
I explained the allotment arrangement to you directly, he said. In this kitchen. In April of 2021. You understood what it meant for Cassidy's credit exposure and why she was sending it.
A pause.
If you're telling your mother you didn't know, I'd like to understand how.
Warren said nothing.
And I'd like to understand, Dennis continued, how 4 years of monthly transfers slipped your mind when you were describing Cassidy's level of involvement to this family.
The table was completely still. Aunt Carol had both hands in her lap.
Maya was looking at her father, not with anger, just watching, the way you watch someone when you're reassessing something you thought you understood. Dennis reached down and lifted the canvas bag onto the chair beside him. He set a manila envelope on the table, not dramatically, not with announcement.
Simply the way you place something that has always belonged there.
I didn't plan to do this at Thanksgiving dinner, he said, looking at Warren when he said it. But Warren asked Cassidy to relinquish a property interest in front of everyone at this table. I think everyone at this table deserves to understand what they just witnessed.
He laid out 3 documents in a row.
The first was the original purchase agreement, both names on the co-borrower line, notarized and clean. The second was a printed allotment history, 4 years of $750 monthly transfers, dates and amounts running down the page in a clean column. The third was a single-page summary from an independent appraisal firm, dated 6 weeks prior. Estimated current market value, $388,000. 25% of $388,000, Dennis said, is approximately $97,000. After the remaining loan balance, Cassidy's net equity position is in the range of $71,000, depending on current payoff figures.
He looked around the table.
Not accusatorially, just looking.
Carol put her hand over her mouth.
Dad, Maya said, you're selling the house.
Warren looked at her.
We were exploring options. Were you going to tell me? Maya, this isn't the...
Were you going to tell me, Dad? Her voice had dropped the same way mine had.
Quieter instead of louder.
I live here. I have things here.
You were listing it without saying anything.
Warren looked at Donna. Donna looked at her plate.
Grandma Evelyn pressed both palms flat on the table.
Slowly.
The way people anchor themselves before they say something that matters. Then she straightened in her chair, not standing, but tall enough that it felt like standing. Warren Thomas Monroe. She only used his full name when something had already been decided. You told me for 4 years that Cassidy had drifted. That she was busy. That she'd moved on.
Her voice didn't shake.
Dennis just told me he explained that allotment to you in this kitchen. While I was sitting at that table.
Warren said nothing.
And who answered the phone? She said, every time Cassidy called.
The silence answered it.
Evelyn turned to Donna.
Donna opened her mouth.
I asked you in September, Evelyn said, whether Cassidy had called for my birthday.
You told me she hadn't.
Evelyn, I may have. Sit down, Donna.
Not a request.
It landed the way a gavel lands.
Donna sat down. I want to step outside the story for just a moment. That moment with Grandma Evelyn, that wasn't the moment I had prepared for. I walked into that house thinking about documents and equity percentages and legal rights. I didn't walk in thinking about my grandmother spending 4 years believing I'd forgotten her. That part hit differently than any number on any page. If you've ever had someone intercept your relationship with a family member, a parent, a grandparent, anyone, I want to hear from you in the comments. I read every single one. Okay. Let me keep going.
I stood up. Not abruptly. Deliberately, the way you stand when you want people to understand that what you're about to say is the last thing you plan to say on the subject. I'm going to say one thing, and then I'd like us to finish this meal.
The table was quiet. Dennis folded his hands.
Evelyn looked at me. I didn't come here to destroy anything, I said. I came because Grandma Evelyn is 81 years old, and I have missed too many Thanksgivings already. That's the only reason.
I looked at my father.
If you want to sell, sell.
I won't stand in the way of that.
But my 25% will be paid out according to the agreement Dennis structured, based on an independent appraisal, not on whatever number is convenient. Dennis will handle communication on my behalf. You can reach me through him.
Dad looked at me.
You just want the money. I want to be treated fairly, I said. Those are two different things.
A pause.
And I want to make sure that when decisions get made about this property, about anything that involves my name on a legal document, I'm notified like a co-owner, not managed like a problem.
Dennis gave one slow nod. I turned to Grandma Evelyn.
Grandma, I would really like to stay for Thanksgiving dinner. If you'll have me.
She looked at me for a long moment.
Then she reached up and patted the chair beside her, the same way she used to when I was 8 years old, sitting at her kitchen table in a different house and a different life. Sit down here, baby, she said.
I sat down.
The table resumed.
It wasn't what it had been an hour ago. But it was honest. And that was more than it had been when I walked in.
3 weeks later, I was back at the base.
Normal routine.
PT at 0530, briefings at 0700. My Aunt Karen, a residential real estate attorney in San Antonio Dennis had recommended, made contact with Gaines within the week. An independent appraisal was ordered through a certified firm. The assessor walked the property on a Tuesday. Final figure, $391,000. Gaines came back requesting a lower number citing condition adjustments. Karen declined on my behalf. The math was done. My net equity position, $68,400. The wire transfer arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I checked my account standing next to a vending machine in a break room that smelled like burnt coffee.
It didn't feel like victory. It felt like a debt being paid. Like an account being settled.
Like things being returned to where they actually belonged.
I went back to work. 2 weeks after that, Maya texted me. Hey. Got into UT Austin. Scholarship and everything. I wrote back within the minute. That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. A pause. Can I call you sometime?
Anytime, I said.
She called that Friday evening.
We talked for an hour. About Mom, about growing up in that house, about the space that had been constructed between us year by year, decision by decision.
I want to have a sister, she said. Just like that. A statement of fact.
You have one, I said.
She laughed. It sounded like something releasing.
6 months after Thanksgiving, the house on Aldercroft Lane sold.
I wasn't there for the closing.
I didn't need to be. Dad has not called me since Thanksgiving. I don't spend a lot of energy being angry about that. When you stop expecting something from people who were never going to give it to you, the anger doesn't have as much to live on. What I know now, what I understood before, but differently after all of it, is this: blood is a starting point. What you do from there is a choice made over and over again. And the other people in your family are making that choice too. If the choices keep coming back wrong, at some point the most honest thing you can do is stop pretending otherwise. I stayed in that arrangement longer than I should have.
Not out of weakness.
Out of a particular kind of hope I had to let go of before anything else could change.
Letting go was the hardest part. Harder than the paperwork.
Harder than the Thanksgiving table.
But on the other side of it, things are quieter. Cleaner. I call Grandma Evelyn on Sundays.
Maya and I text most weeks. I keep thinking I should book a flight to Austin sometime just to have coffee with her in person. That's enough.
More than I had before.
If you've ever had to draw a real line with someone you love, not an ultimatum, but a boundary, I want to know what the hardest part was for you.
Tell me in the comments. Thank you for watching this all the way through. It means more than you know.
If any part of this story touched something in your own life, whether it's about family, about money, about finally stopping the exhausting work of explaining yourself to people who were never really listening, leave me a comment.
I read every single one.
If you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time.
There's more where this came from. Take care of yourselves.